Hi everyone, this is Noel Smith with Extreme Flight, here with the Legacy Aviation 84-inch Turbo Bushmaster. We're going to go over a couple of the mixes we do with the Bushmaster, as well as how we set it up in this video on the Jeti radio. Look for other videos with other radio manufacturers and the setup on those. So yeah, let's get to it. So I just want to go over the mixes real quick. We have, I'm mixing the flaps with ailerons for full span. Of course you can throw those on a switch so you just have independent aileron. We like to fly it with full span, especially if you're hovering, counter the torque roll, that sort of thing. So mostly I fly it with full span, aileron and flap working together. And then one thing I'm doing is butterfly, which is actually real easy to do on the Jeti transmitter because there's a butterfly function. So full up aileron with full down flap, and then we're compensating about 10 to 15% down elevator to compensate for the pitch change. So again, that's a butterfly. Have it on a switch. I have everything on a switch, not a slider, just because it's easier to clean up the airplane if you get into trouble or you want to change what you're doing. So those are all on the switches. I do have them. I do have everything slowed down so it's not an instantaneous. I think it's like a 1.5 second delay that I'm running on all this. Next thing I'm doing is flaps, and then we're mixing the flaps with the ailerons. Full throw on the flaps with about half that throw in aileron. That just helps make the plane a little bit more stable and not stall the wingtips as quickly. So, and you can see there where we still have full aileron and flap movement. The next thing we're doing is spoilers. So this is fun if you're inverted. It really does a high alpha Harrier inverted. And as well as even upright, you get this really crazy steep parachute with a little burst of throttle at the bottom right as you land. It's a lot of fun to play with. Again, I'm mixing elevator in with this, so this is obviously up elevator 10-15%, and then with my down flap and aileron 10-15% down elevator. Some people run more. I like to have it so I still have to compensate a little bit manually, but at least this gets me close. Again, everything's on a switch just so it's easy to clean up, and then I have everything delayed, slowed down about 1.5 seconds on these mixes. So we'll go in depth with the Jeti radio. I'll show you how I do these mixes and sort of walk you through that. Okay, just wanted to go over the settings for the Bushmaster on the Jeti radio. A couple things to start off. I want to talk about some of the functions. First of all, we'll do the obviously the wing type is 2 flaps, 2 aileron, since we're running 1 servo per surface of the aileron and flaps. I think that's pretty obvious. Function assignments, standard aileron, elevator, rudder, throttle, flaps. But you'll see here I have flaps without a control assignment. And we can get into this later why we're doing it. Because I also have this second flap called the mix flap. And that's on SE. So that's on the 3-position SE switch. Just a quick overview. The reason we're doing that is to slow down the flaps when we apply them as flaps or spoilers, but in the mix, when we do full span aileron, where we're mixing the flap into the aileron, it's not slowing the flap down to follow the aileron. I'll get to that in the mixes, but I just wanted to go over that. So we have a normal flap function with no control, and then a mix flap function that's on SE, the 3-position. And then one other thing I wanted to touch base with quick. Let me get to the right. On your servo setup, I know a lot people that run the Jeti and other models know to do this, to set the limits. But I want to go over real quick to make sure you do it, especially on the aileron and flaps in some of these mixes. You don't want to overdrive those servos or the control surfaces. So obviously I have the sub trim set up, and then the max positive and max negative to make sure I get the right throws, to match the throws between two ailerons and two flaps. But then you see on the output here the percentages, so that's 118, and then this is negative 117 when I roll to the right. I'm putting that number in the max positive limit, which is 118, and then the max negative limit, which is negative 117. And that's just so it will not overdrive the servo in any of these mixes, so it's good to prevent any sort of damage. You want to make sure you do that for all surfaces, but especially both ailerons and both flap. And we'll talk about butterfly function first. So I have that on a switch, which is SF. I have it set at 1.5 second delay each way, just so it slows things down. And I'm doing all the tuning in the tuning menu here. Again, we're on, the control is SF, ailerons are 100%, flaps are 100%, and then the 10% mix of the elevators to adjust, to compensate for the pitch change. Like I said before, 10-15% works. I like 10%. We'll go back to the mixes, and I'm running the free mixes. I'm running 4 mixes. I'll explain those quick. So aileron to flap is for the full span aileron, when we're mixing the flaps with the ailerons. And when we go into this 100%, it's on a switch in case you want to just run ailerons independent, so you're not running full span aileron. Like I said earlier, normally we're running full span aileron. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It's just on a switch, nothing else. There's no delay. So again, that's aileron and flap to get the full span aileron. Next is the mix flap to flap. And I'll show you what we've done here. This is to slow down the flap movement. It's not on a switch, 100% not on a switch, and then down here the delay is 1.5 seconds per. And so what that's doing is, as the flaps are applied, it's slowing them down both as a flap and then when they're reflexed as a spoiler. Again, this is the mix flap to flap, just slowing down the movement. Back to mix flap. Next one is mix flap and elevator, and you'll see there the master value is 10%. That's just adjusting for the pitch change of the flap or spoiler application. You'll see 10%. It's not on a switch, it's always on. And then the delay is 1.5 seconds each to match what the flaps are doing. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So it's mix flap to elevator is that mix. And lastly, we have the mix flap to aileron mix. This is so we have full span flaps or spoilers. The ailerons are following the flaps as flaps, or when they're reflexed as spoilers. And in this, there's a couple ways you could do it. I have it set up as a curve. The master value is 100% here on mine. It's not on a switch. And then here I've set up a 3-point curve. And what that's doing is the ailerons are only moving half the amount of the flaps when they're applied as flap, or as spoiler. So you can see the out there is 50%. And the reason we're doing that is just so the wingtips are flying, the outer part of the wing is flying longer than the inner, especially in the post-stall maneuvers. You can adjust this. I found 50% works pretty well. You can play with it more or less. And then again, I have that set at, slowed it down to 1/2 seconds each way. I hope that helps explain some of the mixes, the butterfly, and some of the functions we're doing for on the Jeti radio for the Bushmaster. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to visit us at Facebook at Extreme Flight RC as well as Twitter, and we're always at extremeflightrc.com. Thanks again for watching.